Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome, Roy Cavanagh, sir. How are you to Book Corner?
I'm very good and delighted to be here with you, Paul. It's really enjoyable. I enjoy the crap when I'm on here.
You are my author of the month. We do this regular monthly podcast now with Andy from myfootballbooks.com, who promotes some wonderful football books. You have written so many fantastic football books about Manchester United. You've been so kind in sending me so many books. We've hooked up many times now doing podcasts. So we're going to be, for the first 10 minutes or so, just on Book Corner with Andy, passing ourselves back to Andy. Then we're going to be talking more in length about the Manchester United book of the 70s. So first and foremostly, Legends Publishing, how can people purchase the book is the first question, because that's what we want it to do. Yeah. We want it to fly off the bookshelves, but Roy, we don't want it to fly too quickly off the bookshelves, because it could break your ankle or break your toe if it falls on you.
Yeah, 410 pages and 100 glossy coloured pictures, which for the 70s is remarkable, really, because obviously there's still a lot of black and white around at the beginning of the 70s. But yeah, it's available from legendspublishing.net. It is also on Amazon, so either way. But direct from the publisher at legendspublishing.net, or if you put the title of the book, Manchester United Book of the 70s, I'm sure you'll find it on Amazon as well.
How long did it take you to put this book together? Because all of David Lane's books from Legends Publishing, they are not just books, they are works of art, they're coffee table books, but you do need reinforced glass on that coffee table because they are so heavy. They're just wonderful, aren't they?
Yeah, he does tremendous publications, and he's meticulous with the coloured pictures, which is tremendous. It actually, I suppose, actual writing, probably 12 months, because I actually concentrated on that as opposed to other things, when I had spare time and weekends and whatever. But of course, you've then got the checking, which can take as long as the writing, especially when you've got statistics and things such as that. One thing I learned very, very early in writing books, Paul, was once it's published, it invariably goes on the bookshelf, because if you open it and there is spelt wrong, as was spelt wrong, which is a bad word for me. I must admit, my wife helps me out greatly with that. Is it H-A-S or A-S, that one? It's just have a phobia about it. And then if you read something and it's Y-O instead of Y-O-U for you, there's nothing you can do with it then. It's there. So I'll just tell you a very quick little thing which changed it. One of my early books with Fred Eyre, who we spoke about before, I don't want to, in a way, he was a journeyman football because he played for 26 clubs. But he was a decent player, Fred, and he's got a great talent as after dinner speaker, and his writing is funny. He's got a quick wit, and we wrote this book together, and it was called What a Game. And in it, one of the things early doors that I didn't check as much as I should have done was pictures, because you've got the picture. And then you've just got a small caption underneath, haven't you?
Yeah.
Paul passes to Roy, bang, whatever. And this picture said one of the City, when they won the league in '68, they won at Newcastle 4-3 on the last day. And I'm sure it says something like Summerby scoring the fourth goal. And all that there is on the picture is the net and the ball going in the net. So that after that I'm thinking better check picture captions after this.
Yeah, they can catch you out at times, but it was still Summerby scoring the goal that hit the back of the net. It's a little bit like Puskas' goal in 1954 in
Yeah,
Browne. There was no evidence of him actually kicking it, but then when they picked the ball out the net, yes, we're back on. We're back on filming now. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. Because you do a lot of Man City referencing as well in your books, because you're a football fan of Manchester United, you're a Salford lad, and you're a big cricket fan as well. I do want to talk about the one game there involving City and Manchester United. Probably one of the most iconic games that they've ever played was the game where Dennis Law scored the back heel goal that ultimately, I don't think it was that goal that relegated United, although lots of people seem to think it was. What was the story behind that? And I think they only played 87 minutes of that game. It wasn't actually finished, was it?
No, you see, if we could have had the extra 3 minutes and 1-2-1 and might have stopped up. That wouldn't actually have been correct. But funnily enough, it was a club after your own heart. It was your own Birmingham City.
Yeah.
It was the first year, 73-4, of three up, 3 down. And United, Southampton and Norwich went down. Yeah. But Birmingham, they had 2 great wins. They won the last 2 games comfortably. So consequently, if United had beat City, and I think Stoke on the last one, they still would have gone down. But why spoil a good story? I actually was at the game and I was right behind the goal. We used to be the old scoreboard end at United. When in the days when it was open, you'd have a big open Stretford end, which was like the old 10, and you had a big open end where there was just a scoreboard. And then, various cantilevers came round and covering came round. And the scoreboard end became what's known as K-stand. And in front of it was a standing paddock, and behind it was a cantilever stand. And I had a league, what was called a league match ticket book in those days, from when that opened in 72. So by this one, that was the second, third season. And I was halfway back, right behind the penalty spot, with a lovely elevated view. So I was right behind the goal. And of course, Dennis just instinctively does what he did when he got in the 6-yard box. He put the ball in the net. Yeah. And I'm 99% certain of this. He actually turned round. The City players came to celebrate. But, he just walked off. And he walked, because the tunnel in those days at Old Trafford was on the centre line. And he just walked and went up the tunnel. And I'm pretty sure that was the last ball he kicked for City. And in fact, it may well have been the last ball he kicked in Football League games, because he went to the 74 World Cup with Scotland, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, he did.
But I don't think he played in the 74-5 season. I've not doubly checked on that, but I'm pretty sure that was his last epitaph in football.
And when he walked down that tunnel, do you know where he went?
Yeah, I do actually. He went into the United dressing room.
He did, yeah, absolutely.
And then the United players were trooped in after him. They didn't say, "What the effing hell are you doing in here?" type of thing. And they just sat down, knackered around him. It's a cracking story, that, isn't it?
Absolutely. He was in tears, wasn't he, Dennis? Jim McCalliard told me. He said, we walked in after the game. Yeah, because Jim played in that game. He said there was Dennis in the corner in tears. Yeah. I went round, consoled him and that, and when Tommy come in, because we thought it was going to go a bit balmy, because like with Tommy, did he sell him to City, or did he give him a free? It was a free, wasn't it?
Yeah, he gave him a free, so he could go anywhere. Yeah. And City, who were they were a decent side in those days. You had Colin Bell and still had Summerby playing for them, and I think he'd signed. Oh no, they hadn't signed. They might have signed Dennis Stewart. I can't remember, but and Joe Corrigan was there, and Tommy Booth. They're a decent side. Yeah. But Tommy Dock quite disgracefully, really, let Dennis go on a free transfer. Now he did have a lot of injuries towards the end of his career and everything. But I don't think it was just the fact he gave him a free transfer. I think it was the communication of him giving him a free transfer which was in doubt. And of course, I think it led to, infamous law cases where, excuse the pun, cases where Tommy Dock, Willie Morgan, he accused him of lying and things such as that. And I think the Dock was found guilty, actually. But that is part of the book. If you want, I can tell you that part as well, because it's very interesting that the 73-4 season when they actually did get relegated. That at the start of that season, in writing it, it was one of the most, I don't like using the word depressing, but it was one of the most awkward and no way enjoyable writing about United. I mean, you can write about United and Birmingham or whoever you want, and they win and lose. But this, with the passage of time and remembering each game, you looked at it and you thought, hang on a minute, we're starting the 73-4 season. Bobby Charlton's retired.
Yep.
Dennis has been let go disgracefully. Georgie was on walkabout. Yeah. We let Tony Dunn, who was a really top bloke, a top bloke, but a fantastic fullback. We let him go on a free transfer to Bolton, where he actually played another 5 seasons with Bolton. And then Cardinals sent Martin Buchan, who had the privilege of meeting again last week, to give him his copies because he wrote the foreword. They moved Martin Buchan, who was as good at number 6 as any in the country, and arguably around. They moved him to number 3, to left back. Yeah. And, young Jerry Daly was given his debut. He was only 18. Brian Greenoff was only 19. Sammy Mack was 19, 20, something like that. And, you're looking at it and you're thinking, bloody hell, no wonder we're going to go down here. Mm. And actually, we just mentioned the man. We signed Jimmy McCallio from the Wolves around the February, March. And, for that last 2 months, March and April, we played some really good stuff. And those were the best results we had. And Jimmy made a heck of a difference.
We're gonna pass back over now to Andy. You and I are gonna continue, but just before we do pass back to Andy, December the 22nd, 1973, Stoke City and Manchester United were level on points. Stoke went on when Alan Hudson turned up at the Victoria Ground in January 74 and got to Europe. And sadly for Manchester United, they got relegated. But at Christmas, who was top goal scorer for Manchester United? It's quite incredible, isn't it?
It's Alex Stepney. Was it Alex Stepney?
Alex Stepney, yeah.
Penalty.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And actually, he missed one penalty. He missed a penalty against Wolves at home. They drew 0-0. And, he called Gary Pearce? Was it Gary Pearce?
Yeah, Gary Pearce. He was a stand-in for Lofty, wasn't he? Yeah.
And he saved the Alex penalty. But the other one, funnily enough, one was against Birmingham, and Kelly was in goal, I think. Would it be Kelly?
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, what's his first name? Kelly?
Mike.
Was it Alec?
Mike Kelly.
Well, I'm pretty sure that him and Alec knew each other from London, from school days in London. I mean, it's worth checking out if Mike Kelly is a Londoner, because I'm pretty sure Alec knew him.
He definitely played for Queen's Park Rangers, and he was definitely doing coaching courses, because when Chelsea played QPR and Osgood scored 3 goals against him, he gave him the old fingers, because I think it was only Hudson. I think there was Hudson and Osgood that didn't get on this FA coaching course. I think they told him to stick it where the sun don't shine.
Yeah, so, that was the goal against Birmingham, and they won 1-0 with that game. And the other one, his other goal was against Peter Shilton against Leicester. I mean, Alec's a great guy. I mean, he's when I say laid back, he's, you know what I mean. He's not I am. He's a cracking guy, great company, and lovely to talk to. But I mean, he was embarrassed that in the end, I think there was 2 goals. Two people had 6 goals. United leading goal scorer in the season, 6 goals. One of them was Lou Macari. I'm guessing now. I've got a feeling it might have been Sammy Mack, but it was ridiculous, and no wonder they got relegated. And then, of course, the first player Tommy signed then in the second division, they signed him actually at the '74 Cup final in London, which was Liverpool and Newcastle, I think.
Yes, it was 74, definitely 100%.
And they signed Stuart Pearson from Hull City that weekend. And of course, Stuart was a natural goal scorer. And, again, here's an interesting one for you, though. And I was talking to Martin Buchan about this last weekend. I know it sounds sacrilegious, but in a way, if they had avoided relegation, would the next 2 or 3 seasons been still around the 14th, 15th spot? Whereas with them going into the second division, which you wouldn't wish on your enemy really, but going in, or perhaps you would with some enemies teams. But when they were in the second division, they'd signed Pearson. There was a rebirth. The younger players were that year older. McCallio was still there for half of that season at least. But the younger players had definitely matured. Jerry Daly, Brian Greeno. Coppell came towards the March, and they really came out of the second division flying high, so that when they walked into the first division the year after, they'd already been there, if you understand what I mean.
Yep.
2 years before, and the likes of Alec and Lou Macari and people such like Martin Buchan. You had players who all them grounds were they were used to playing on stadiums such as that, and of course they played some exhilarating football under Tommy Docherty for 3 seasons. So in a way, as I say, it could be sacrilegious, but were they better? They made faster progress, if you understand what I mean, as opposed to languishing in 18th spot and 17th spot.
I was talking to my Manchester United friend today, and I said that I'm doing a podcast with Roy Cavanagh, who's wrote many, many books. And we were talking about the 73-74 season, because it was an absolute pivotal season for Manchester United. And he said the best thing that happened to us was we went down, because we rebuilt. And you're right, rebuilding, especially with kids, and you're playing, catch up, if you like, and you're finishing 16th, 17th, and so on. It's sometimes demoralising for the kids, because they're winning a bit, they're drawing a bit, they're getting beat quite a lot. When you go down that second division, you win. Confidence is building, momentum is kicking in, and I think that United proved it, because when they went up with a force. But we've finished the 60s. So let's go back to the early 70s, where your book starts. Manchester United, from the tragedy of Munich, 10 years on, lifted the European Cup at Wembley against Benfica. They're rebuilding, because any team has to rebuild from a position of strength. Although, how do you pension off, like Docherty did, Bestlaw and Charlton, arguably the greatest 3 that's ever played in English football and world football as well. But they were in the late 60s after Alan Clark, because Alan told me, I mean, he was going to sign, because Busby had met him and he was going to sign, but it was only the Leicester City chairman, and their manager at the time was Matt Gillies. And he liked them, and that's why Alan Clark decided to play for Leicester City. They were after Malcolm MacDonald as well, because Malcolm had said to me, Manchester United were in, but Newcastle had come in with the dough, and he was off to Newcastle United. And Tony Curry told me that he was primed to take over from Bobby Charlton in 1973, but Tony
Wow.
didn't want to leave Sheffield United. So
Wow.
they were building, wasn't they? United,
Yeah.
even on the success, were still building, but they just couldn't get them 3 players over the line. Had they have, how different could things have been?
Well, absolutely, and in a lot of ways, Paul. I mean, you're quite right. If you take May in '68 when they won the European Cup, I mean, I knew George I knew George when he was 15, 16 when he first came.
Yeah.
And then in later life when I was doing after dinners and I was hosting them, I compared George and sometimes usually Rodney Marsh, but George makes the classic statement. He says the first 5 years of being at Manchester United, from 63 to 68, were absolutely staggeringly brilliant. And the next 5 years, from 68 to 73, should have been, but we didn't build on it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure these are not lies or fantasies, because Wilf McGuinness is a top man, a really top man. And funnily enough, I might be seeing him on Monday. I'm going speaking at the United Memories Group, and I hear Wilf goes along occasionally. But he honestly told me, and he wrote a team out. They definitely wanted Shilton, and over quite a while, really. Even Tommy Docherty wanted Shilton when they won the cup in '77. But I think he went to Forest. He'd gone to Forest then, I think that's right, because they won the European Cup, didn't they, the year after. But they wanted Shilton. They wanted Mick Mills at Ipswich. He was a very good right back and captain. They wanted David Nish when he was at Leicester.
Great player.
They wanted Colin Todd when he was at Sunderland.
Yep.
Centre half, I mean, they finished up. Ian Yore is the only signing Wilf made, by the way.
Yeah.
Alan Ball, who lived close to me then when he was at Everton, and he went to the Arsenal. There was another player, whatever, and you've just mentioned Clark. Malcolm MacDonald I knew about. You told me about Clark. I didn't know about Tony Curry. But those players were the players that Wilf wanted to sign, and a lot of them, Wilf had when I think he'd been manager of England under 23s. Yeah. So a lot of those he knew from bringing them through, and we signed Ian Yore, and that's no disrespect to Ian Yore, because in his time, Ian Yore was a bloody good centre half. Yeah. But joining Manchester United in 1969 wasn't his time. He'd gone. He had knee injuries as well. Dennis had this knee injury from before the European Cup final, which is why he didn't play in it. Bobby would have had to retire eventually, obviously. Although again, Martin Buchan says he still had legs. He still had legs and energy, and he could have played another year, possibly 2 years. But I think he was so upset about it. And George, we can criticise George for all you want, but there were times over 2 or 3 years where he single-handedly was carrying United. Yeah. And imagine being European Footballer of the Year at 21 and 22, winning the European Cup, and then looking round and thinking, right, I'll pass to Paul now. Where's he gone? Where's Dennis gone? Where's Bobby? Where's Roy? Who's there? And so those were really big mistakes. I've got a lot of views on them, and they wouldn't be. People might disagree. So, but I mean, Matt, in a lot of ways, went on too long. Really, for him to have won the European Cup 10 years after the Munich air disaster is unbelievable. Yeah. And whilst he did move to be the general manager, I don't know if I mentioned it to you before, but anyone who's got any Manchester United programme for the 1969-70 and 1970-71 season till Christmas, when Wilf got fired, you do not see his name in the officials, where it gives club officials, president, chairman, secretary, treasurer, that type of thing, directors. His name doesn't appear on that. And generally page 3 in a programme is your manager is in welcoming the opposition and the directors and the players and fans to wherever. Wilf did not write one single article in those programmes in those 18 months, and Matt Busby did. And he also had his name on the list of officials as the general manager. And it really was a feeling that he wanted to, I'm sure, help out.
Yeah.
But, Wilf had constraints.
You look at things like that, and I guess history repeated itself to a certain degree because Sir Alex was still there while Ollie was. And I remember when Ollie says, I'm not going to put me card in the manager's car park because it's the gaffers. And all great teams are victims of their own success or successes. Liverpool had this problem with Shanks when Shanks retired. In fact, I think Liverpool, I'm right in saying, had to tell Shankly to stay away from the training ground because the players didn't know who to address as the boss.
No.
And as much as they want to still be part of it, it can be very confusing for the players.
Yeah. The one Liverpool didn't replace, of course, was Paisley.
Yeah.
Because they actually did have in place a formulation after Shankly, because he had the famous boot room and everything. And Paisley, Paisley's record is incredible. And I try and do. I'm an ambassador of Bishop Auckland Football Club.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to be because of what they did to help Manchester United. But Bob Paisley played in the Wembley final for Bishop Auckland, I think in 19...
I didn't know that.
Well, not a Wembley final. He played in the FA Amateur Cup final in 1939. That was his club up in the northeast before he went to Liverpool as a player. But Paisley's record is incredible. And then Joe Fagan even came in for one season and did a remarkable job. And Dalglish, of course, did. So, that went on. But that broke, didn't it, probably after Dalglish?
Yeah, I think Souness broke it, didn't he?
Well, yeah, but I think
he wanted to change it and do it his way, which managers do. But going back to Bob Paisley going to Liverpool, a certain Matt Busby had a lot to do with that, as did Billy Liddell. And it's the paths of the two, what I would perceive to be the two greatest clubs in the world, Liverpool and Manchester United. And I know that there's an awful lot of rivalry and they don't like each other, both from the northwest. But when you look at it as a complete neutral, two phenomenal clubs and two clubs built on their own business acumen, if you like. I mean, you've educated me on how Manchester United had no money, they were broke, and the goodwill and the intelligence of people there at the helm steered United into greater, more profitable pastures and less choppier waters, if you like. And when people slag off the likes of Liverpool and Man United, these big clubs, there wasn't always big clubs. It was their own intelligence and ingenuity that have made them big clubs.
Well, all right. I've told you before that the first game, I'm 99% certain, and I know I've got a decent memory. I can't 100%, but I'm 99% certain. The first game I went to was United and Villa Boxing Day in 1954.
Yeah.
And it was just because they had two Moss brothers played for the Villa. And I remember saying to my dad, hang on, why'd they got two I was only 7 or 8. Why'd they got two Mosses there? What's the crap? So it must have been a Villa game. And but so if you say from 1955, I've got a pretty good memory, if I say so myself.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the first time I saw Liverpool was 1962 because they were in the second division.
Absolutely, yeah.
They were in the second division.
Yeah.
And and then of course Shankly brought them up, and then they reached a great success. And United in the period, people won't want to even go that far back now. But if you really do look at the history of clubs, United between the two wars, 1920 to say 1939, had really choppy times.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. You are right. It is a quill. I remember Bobby Charlton saying sometimes on a Sunday morning, Bill Shankly would go down to his house.
Yeah.
And have you got the kettle on, Norma, for a drink?
Yeah.
I mean, can you believe that now? Can you imagine Klopp? Can you imagine Klopp going round to one of United players or I mean, it's unbelievable.
But again, it was Busby that told Liverpool to go and get Bill Shankly, didn't
Yeah.
they? There was, I think back in those days, there was more of a romance in football. They were all friends. Yes, of course, we had the rivalry, and no bigger rivalry than United against Liverpool, but there was that respect as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And they worked. It was almost like as they roll out this football family today that actually doesn't exist. But back then, in those days, it did exist, and it wouldn't be uncommon for that to happen. In fact, Don Revie and Shanks were great friends.
Yeah.
There was just this. I wouldn't say as thick as thieves because that's not a very nice term, but they were all in it together, wasn't they? I think is a fair assessment.
Yeah.
What was your favourite year when you're writing the book in the 70s? Because things did go bad, and probably the worst game, although there was already relegated, but when you played Stoke City in 1974. That must have been a really difficult game for United to play in.
Yeah, they were down, of course, and a very difficult night. And of course, I'm not sure if Jimmy Greenough played in that game, but of course, Greenough was a great signing. But that only came about because of Stoke City. The roof blew off one of the stands, and they weren't insured.
Butler's Lane End, yeah.
Yeah, and they needed the money pretty quick, and United coughed up 120,000 or something like that for Jimmy Greenough. It's interesting with Alan Hudson. I mean, I've not had the pleasure of meeting Alan Hudson, but I saw a lot of his early career, and you mentioned Tony Curry there. I mean, there were some great players, weren't there? In that, and I mean, gifted. You've just mentioned two there with Hudson and Curry, but I mean Frank Worthington, who I did know very well. I mean, in fact, here's a little story for you. When he used to do after dinner with Frank, and Frank walked into the room, he always had a black shirt on, his hair brushed right back. He got a black shirt on, and he thought he was Elvis. He definitely thought he was Elvis. And when he sat down, you would say to him within 5 minutes, "What do you want to drink, Elvis?" I mean, he just came over. But what a magnificent footballer! And there was lots of them around there.
I mean, you could look at Stan Bowles as well.
Yeah,
you look at you'd reference Rodney Marsh earlier.
Yeah,
we had Charlie George. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We had so many. I mean, they're referenced to as the Mavericks in an endearing manner. That term is sometimes used in a derogatory manner, but for me it's always used in a loving way because them players are the reason that I love football, watching those on Match of the Day and seeing. And another character, of course, in Manchester was Mike Summerby, who again, George would go around there. They were best of pals, weren't they? There was a lot of love. Alan Hudson says there was a lot of love in 1973, apart from at Chelsea, but there was a lot of love at Manchester, although one got relegated and one didn't.
George was like some of his best man
at
his wedding. And in fact, there's a story in the book here, and they played City. And of course, George, people put him down as outside right, and he made his debut at outside right, and he wore the number 7 shirt against Benfica, of course, in '68. But he played a lot of games at number 11 as well.
Yeah.
And George was number 11 in this game, and of course, City's number 7 was Summerby. So the kick-off and they near it, and George was actually getting a lot of death threats in the 70s. And in fact, there was one up at Newcastle, which the police took very serious indeed. But this particular one came at a local derby game, United City at Main Road. and the papers were full of it. George had been threatened, and of course they were stood opposite each other. And some of us told him where the effing hell to get off. He says, "Someone's going to have a shot at you. I don't want them to miss and hit me." But it just shows the times. Incredible time. But yeah, you asked me about the best season in the 70s. Well, you can write off the first three, and you can write off up to the relegation. The second division one was an incredible season because, like you quite correctly sussed out what I was trying to get over. The young players mingled with your Stepneys and you Martin Buchan and people such as that. They just mingled perfectly, and they came back heads held high, and they had a great start. They were playing attractive football, and they were used to winning because they'd had that. They had that. I'm sorry, I'm talking now about the first season back in 75-6. They were really fearless, really. And actually, when you look at records, and I'm going to mention 2 seasons in the 70s, although one overlaps into the 80s because it's a 79-80 season. But that little 4-letter word called luck.
Yep.
Now, 75-6, United's first season back in the first division. With 3 games to go, if you look at the table and you look at the games, they could have won the league.
Yeah.
They were chasing Liverpool very hard for the league. They were in the FA Cup final. But, they didn't have massive squads. There was the 11, you could virtually pick the 11 players, and if one man got hurt, the reserve 4 went in, or the reserve 3 went in. We didn't make 5-6 changes like they do these days. And they didn't have the big squads. But there was 1 or 2 injuries, and of course they'd now qualified for the FA Cup final. And I think the glamour of that, particularly as on paper, they were cert because they were playing second division Southampton. But everyone forgot that Southampton had a far more experienced side than the United side. You had Shannon, you had Osgood, you had Rodriguez, who was a Welsh captain at fullback. You had a lot of experience there, and Jimmy McCalliag, of course, was playing. And United lost the final 1-0. And okay, offside, not offside, whatever. They lost the final 1-0. But they needed to score, United, in that first 30 minutes. If they'd scored, I'm sure they would have won it. But when they didn't score, Southampton realised that, hey, we've got a chance here, and they won it. But United came second or third in the end and lost the cup final. So, they could have won a double. And they didn't, and if and whatever. But they weren't far short because you were only 3 games off the end of the season. And then the end one, 79-80, one of Dave Sexton's seasons. And Dave Sexton, of course, was much vilified. Be interesting what Alan Hudson thought of Dave Sexton.
I'll tell you exactly.
Right, okay, well, I'll just finish what I'm going to say, and I'd like to hear. But Dave Sexton, on paper, had a success at Chelsea. But, of course, we lost the cup final in 79 to Arsenal, 3-2, that memorable game with 3 goals in the 3 minutes.
Ending. Yeah.
So that could have been a win. And then 79-80 season, they were runners up to Liverpool by 2 points when it was 2 points for a win. Yeah. So, again, he could have won the cup and league in successive seasons. Yeah. He didn't, but he could have done. And then he got sacked. What was Alan Hudson's view?
Many people believed that Alan Hudson didn't like Dave Sexton, which is totally incorrect. Alan liked Dave. The problem is that Dave wasn't a manager in Alan Hudson's opinion. Dave was a coach, not a manager. Yeah. And had he have brought in somebody as a manager and he'd have stayed as a coach, then I think things would have been different at Chelsea. But that was the problem. And the way that Chelsea, those players at the Bridge, with the likes of Uddy and Ozzy and Charlie Cook and Sponge and Tommy Baldwin and a few others, that there was a bit of a drinking culture there at Chelsea, and Dave didn't like it because he was teetotal. He was a churchgoer and he was teetotal. He was the son of a boxer, and that. So and I think that having that job so early, the Chelsea job as a manager, I think it was a difficult time for him, because then he went on and he managed Queen's Park Rangers, didn't he? For a while.
But he'd won. I am right. He won the cup with Chelsea, didn't he? In that infamous final game.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
and then the European Cup Winners' Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dave was relatively successful, but there was always an undercurrent there at Chelsea. I mean, Uddy'd say to me, because we do a podcast, My Life, My Music, and the one track, Uddy picks a load of tracks, and the one was Rainy Days and Mondays by the Carpenters. He's a lover of music. And he'd say Dave would listen to the stories of the weekends with, like, Charlie and Tommy Baldwin going down to King's Road and doing the arm wrestles with Richard Harris and Oliver Reed and stuff and what have you. He'd smell the breath, and he'd have them running around Epsom Racecourse. But, the way that Dave would do things, whereas when he went to Stoke with Waddington was never bothered about what they'd done when they wasn't playing. All Waddington was ever bothered about is what they were doing on the pitch for Stoke City, whereas Dave was more concerned on what they were doing off the pitch. He would give the players bollockings, but he would never, he said, I never once heard him or saw him put his arm round Charlie or Ozzy and congratulate them. And I think that it just was a learning curve for him.
Funnily enough, I mean, what years are we talking about? 72, 3, 4. If you think 50 years ago, but if you think what's just happened at United this last month or so, in a way, Solskjaer seems to come over as a decent man manager, or a man's man. I hate using that, but understand the players. But his coaching was letting him down. His tactic, his personal tactic. So you can imagine him bringing the Dave Sexton of the time to do the coaching and everything, and the responsibility of whether they'd been on the lash or not the night before was the manager's, which was Ollie's. And he might have said, "Well, as long as they win on the Saturday, I'm not that bothered." Osgood, Osgood was a great centre forward. I mean, he broke his leg in that. Was it with Emily Hughes?
Emily Hughes, he broke it,
but he was a great centre forward. I saw him. First time I saw him was the year we won the European Cup, 1968.
Yeah.
And he came to United. We'd just been to. Was it the year before? It was it was the year. No, it was. We were just gone through in the quarter final of the European Cup, and people felt that this was going to be a good chance. And Chelsea came to United and won 3-1. Yeah. And Osgood played centre forward, and he was sublime. He wasn't. In a way, he was a two-man centre forward. He could head the ball brilliantly, and he could score goals seemingly with both feet. But he could also drop off and play the other role as well. I love watching Osgood play, and again I had the real pleasure of hosting him at sporting dinners, and it was great for me to be alongside people who you admire.
The big man was different class and a great character, and he loved a shandy as well. He tells some great stories about Ozzy. In fact, when they played Birmingham in the 70s. He played 73-74 season in the September. They played Birmingham, and he said, "I tell you, Paul, there's a good story about it. Ozzy said to me the day before, do you fancy going for a drink?" So they went and watched the Ali and Ken Norton fight. And then when Hudson come back the year after, they met up with a wedding party and were drinking till about 4 o'clock in the morning. So both times Hudson played again, he was probably 3 parts to the wind. But again, back in the 70s, that's what they did. And Osgood scored one of the best goals that Old Trafford had seen in the 70s, of course, when they played in the 1970 FA Cup final replay. Yeah.
I mean, how did seriously? It's okay turning a blind eye, but how didn't 8 players get sent off in that game? I mean, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Funnily enough, in this 70s book on United, Tommy Bowen there, because Tommy Bowen, the doc brought him 2 matches on loan. And he played in the second division. He brought him to United and he played 2 games on loan. And one of the parts of the book is I cover the 76 players who played an official match. Official has to be, it's an official first team game, not a testimonial or a friendly. It has to be like a League Cup, FA Cup, European competitions, an official game. And Tommy Bowen played in 2 games, and they didn't win either of them. And Tommy Doc brought him and sent him back. But that's interesting that he is in that. Just an interesting point on that, on statistics and all that type of thing. Because you were doing the 76 players that had played in official games, there's a lad called Jimmy Kelly who came on as a substitute against Wolves, about 75, 76, something like that. So he might have only played 40 minutes, but his name would go in the players who are all got a mainly coloured headshot and the full statistics and a bit of a blurb about them. And he only played 30, 40 minutes, but there's another lad who even staunch United fans may never have heard of, but he's called Peter Loughnane, Loughnaine, Loughnane. And Peter Loughnane actually played in 13 first team games for United, but not official games. So, he went on a world tour that Tommy Docherty took him on. And it's quite incredible. Seriously, the world tour took him, not in any order, but a game in Switzerland, Iran, Hong Kong, played 5 games in Australia, 4 in New Zealand. This is after the season ended. Yeah. And Indonesia, all on the same tour. And I think there was either a World Cup on or a European, no, it wasn't a European Championship. But they didn't have all the full 11 players, so a lot of younger players went on that world tour. And this Peter Loughnane played in 7 of the games. And he also played against Celtic in Jimmy Johnson and, what a player he was.
Oh, yeah.
Dear. And Bobby Lennox, his testimonial, he played against Red Star Belgrade in a friendly Old Trafford. So he played in big games, but they weren't official games. I do mention him, but he's not in the 76 players' official appearances. Tommy Bowen is, because he played 2. Incredible, really.
Uddy says Tommy Bowen could smell a pub from the tarmac as soon as the plane had landed. Well, you're talking Jimmy Johnson. He was a better footballer than he was a sailor, wasn't he?
Oh my goodness! What a winger! I mean, Martin Buchan was talking to him last week about Willie Henderson, who was the Rangers 7 at the time, I mean, Scotland, of course. I go back remembering clearly Scotland in the 60s and what players they had. I mean, how the heck they didn't get to the 62 World Cup, how they didn't get to the 66 World Cup at Wembley, in England. I mean, closing my eyes, you got Bill Browne at Tottenham, the goalkeeper. What a goalie he was. You had John Gregg, Eric Caldo, you had Paddy Crerand, you got Jim Baxter, You've got Johnston, you've got Willie Anderson, you've got John White, the ghost, what a player, the Tottenham Hotspur player, St John, Gilzine, Dennis Law, and the Celtic Lions team of 67. I mean, it's quite incredible. I mean, Frank McClintock, blimey, some great players there. And I think they played as a team, but they didn't win, did they? They didn't get through to win, to get European World Cup qualifications then.
I'm not sure how it was you qualified in those days, because up to a certain time, if you won the home internationals, you qualified for the World Cup, didn't you? But I'm not too sure when that ended. But Jimmy Greaves always says it, 1962, that was England's best team.
Yes.
Better than 66. And there's many schools have thought the 1970 team was better than the 66 as well. But, it's just the way that it drops, isn't it? You get that little bit of luck. And sometimes when you play bloody Brazil, it's a bit difficult, especially if Garrincha and Pelé are playing.
Jimmy did talk about great time. No, not great time. Great stories about the accommodation that they had to put up with in Chile in 1962. I mean, but yeah, and when I think 58, I mean, people say about would Duncan Edwards have been the captain in 66 instead of more, all that. But you go back to 58. Don't forget the World Cup in 58 was in Sweden.
Yep.
So it was in Europe. You weren't going. And Roger Byrne at 3, Duncan Edwards at 6, and Tommy Taylor at 9 were vital members of that England team. Yep. Bobby Robson had just come in. I mean, a true story about Bobby Robson. I wrote the original biography of Duncan Edwards, which. 1988, reprinted in 1998. And we wanted Bobby Charlton to do the forward. And I'm not going into it here, but for whatever reason, he didn't do the forward. Yeah. And so we asked Bobby Robson to do the forward in 1988. And a lot of times, Paul, on books, you write the forward for the person, and they just say, "Oh, just alter that." "Oh, yeah, that's fine," and they sign it.
Yep.
And that's it. And Bobby Robson, I've actually still got the letter. He said, "No. I will write the forward about Duncan Edwards." I made my England debut against France in November '57, and that turned out to be Duncan Edwards' last game. And the same month, he played in a game which I believe Albion people still rate as one of the games of West Brom. They beat the Busby Bays 4-3 at the Hawthorns. Yeah. United missed the penalty as well. And this was in the 3 months before Munich. And he said, just to be playing against him, he said, what a player, what a lad, and whatever. And he wrote it all himself, did Bobby Robson.
That's Bobby though, and he liked to be hands-on, and I'd never met the guy, but a smashing fella by all accounts. We were talking about wingers earlier. Manchester United had some great wingers, didn't they, in the 70s? And that year that you got relegated and then developed this youthful side that really come back up and set their house ablaze. In many instances. Coppell and Gordon Hill, two great wingers, wasn't they? Yeah.
Well, Coppell actually came, Gordon Hill rather came when we got back into the First Division in 75.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But in 74-5, of course, Willie Morgan, who I knew very well, Willie, he was the outside right. Mm-hmm. And him and Doherty, I think, started having, a bit of fractures. And Tommy Doherty signed Stevie Coppell and he was at university in Liverpool.
Yeah, he's a clever lad, wasn't he? Yeah.
Playing for Tranmere Rovers. And Jimmy Murphy evidently saw him for half an hour and said, just get him signed. Mm-hmm. And he was only 19. And the week before his debut, he came. I can visualise it now. He came on against Cardiff, and the doc pulled took Morgan off and put Coppell on. It was 0-0 at half time, and about 10 minutes into the second half, United won 4-0, and Coppell laid 2 goals on a plate. And I think they went undefeated for the rest of the season, because there was a little bit of the only hiccup in their second division side, Paul. I remember being at Hillsborough in early December, and they were top of the league in the semi-final of the League Cup, and Jim Holton broke his leg.
Right.
And that had a big hiccup to the team. And Walsall knocked him out in the 3rd round of the Cup after a replay. And I remember going to Villa Park at the end of February, and Villa were a good side. They came up with United and Norwich. Sunderland were a great side in that second division. So it wasn't an easy ride. They had some good side. But Villa beat United 2-0 at Villa Park. I remember going. And United was still top, but instead of having like a 7-point lead, it come down to about 3.
Yeah.
And they'd had a run, and this is around the time where Tommy Baldwin had made 2 appearances and we didn't win either game. And, there was a bit of a hiccup. We got beaten in the semi-final against Norwich over 2 legs. Pearson was injured, couldn't play in either. Got knocked out of the FA Cup by Walsall. But the week after the Villa game was that Cardiff game, and Coppell came in and was brilliant. The year after, when we were back in the First Division, around the November, they signed Gordon Hill, and his first game was against the Villa at Old Trafford, and it was a marriage made in heaven. Coppell worked. Here's an interesting one for you. I had a really great chat with Martin Buchan last week, and he said, a diamond, a great bloke, and a truly great player. And coming from Martin Buchan, that was about Stevie Coppell. Yeah. Was whatever. He had a slightly different view about Gordon Hill in that he said he was an absolutely brilliant player. Yeah. But tactically and whatever, he thought he was a bit brainless, really, in that respect. But it worked, didn't it? I mean, he had, and he was a great player. Gordon Hill, load of goals. But yeah, you're right. Coppell and Hill were vibrant for United for the next 2 or 3 years, weren't they?
But Martin Buchan, he was the first captain to win the Scottish Cup and the English Cup, wasn't he?
I think he's the only one.
Still to this day,
I think he's still the only one.
Yeah, he certainly was for a long time.
Yeah, I might be wrong on that, but I think he's still the only one to have won the Scottish Cup with Aberdeen and the English Cup. He won it with United, of course. So, yeah.
A true Manchester United legend. We've got to talk about the 77 FA Cup final, because you played Liverpool. It was was it a Jimmy Greenough shot and it hit Lou going in, or the other way round? And that was the Doc's last game, wasn't it? Because he got embroiled in that situation with the physio's wife.
Yeah, interestingly, 2 points on that, because I did a load of dinners with Tommy, and Tommy Docherty is exactly what the tin says. If someone tells you any story about Tommy Docherty, it's probably true in a lot of ways, larger than life. But interesting thing there with Mary Browne, who's the wife of Laurie Browne, and that was 1977. They finished up marrying each other. Yeah. And they lived, they were married till Tommy died last year. Yeah, well, They married 40 years, so it wasn't a one-night stand, so to speak, or anything like that. But going back to that final with Liverpool, we got beat with Southampton, and the year after we started quite well, and then Buchan got hurt, we were struggling, and then they signed Jimmy Greenough, around November, December, and they went on this great run, got through to the final, and I'm not. I know I can be biased, but I'm not. Hopefully, not in this case. But FA Cup finals were not necessarily great games. That was a great game.
Yeah.
A couple of great goals. Pearson's was a great goal. Jimmy Casey's was a great goal. And as you say, Lou had the shot. It brushed Jimmy Greenoff's chest and went in and won the cup. And of course, deprived Liverpool of the treble because they won the league. Was it the league and the European Cup, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah, 77. Yeah, European Cup.
But that was Tommy Dock's last game, and Sexton came in for the start of the following season.
Because that would have been the proper treble, wouldn't it? You know, the Football League Championship, the European Cup, and the FA Cup.
That's what United did in '99.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the proper treble.
But when they say the treble, we won the League Cup and we won the Cup Winners' Cup. It is a treble, but it ain't the treble.
The real treble has got to be the League, the FA, and the European Cup.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So Manchester United, they started off the decade with McGuinness. Then it was Frank O'Farrell, wasn't it? Passed the baton on to the Doc, and then the Doc passed it on to Dave Sexton. Is that in the right order? I mean, I'm not a Manchester United fan, but through memory.
Yes and no. That order is correct, but there was one other, because Sir Matt came back.
Right, yeah.
Wilf McGuinness got sacked around Boxing Day 1971. And for the rest of that season, till the May, Matt Busby was the assistant, not the assistant, sorry, was the interim manager, as per Ralph Rackenecker, whatever he called. So Matt came back and stabilised the side, and they finished 8th and whatever. But then O'Farrell came the start of the 71-2, 72-3 season, and then he lasted till the Christmas. But his first season with United, of course, Frank O'Farrell, I saw his first game. His first game was a Whatney Cup match. Whatney Cup at Halifax Town, and all the big guns were playing. Bobby, George, and Dennis, all three played, and we got beat 2-1.
Yeah.
That was his first game, and you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, what have we landed here?" You know, we just signed this guy, and then from the August until this is 71-2. I'm just looking at it now, 71-2. From the August right through to Christmas, and at Christmas they were 5 points clear.
Wow.
2 points for a win, by the way.
Yeah.
And they were playing majestic football. And here's an interesting one. I'll just briefly, if you got the time.
Of course, absolutely.
71-2 season started. So after the Whatney Cup thing, Derby County away. We're a great side. 71-2. Drew 2-2. On the Wednesday, Chelsea away. George got sent off wrongly, and it was rescinded, but he was sent off. And they came back and they won. United won 3-2 at Chelsea. I bet what he was playing in that, actually. Certainly Osborne.
He would have, yeah.
Then on the Friday, Arsenal at home played at Liverpool, and Arsenal were the double winners from the year before. Played at Liverpool because Old Trafford was shut for the first 2 home matches due to a knife throwing incident the year before.
Yeah.
And then on the Monday night, West Brom at home played at Stoke, won 3-1. The following Saturday, Wolves away drew 1-1. And then the Tuesday lost at Everton 1-0. His first home game at Manchester was actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Was the 7th game of the season.
Yeah.
And they were playing some magnificent football. Absolutely, they beat Southampton in one game, 5-2, and it was the first time they wore that yellow shirt and blue shorts. And it really was like watching Brazil. You were me. And George disappeared. They got hammered at West Ham 3-0 on New Year's Day, and he just disappeared. And the team went 8 or 9. They lost 8 or 9 games on the bounce.
Yeah.
And then, they signed Buchan and he signed Ian Storey-Moore, who was a great player, but injury prone, wasn't he? Great.
It was a shame that he had that injury at Forest, and then he had the injury at United. But again, what a great signing that was in the 1971-72 season. But Browne had signed him, of course, for Derby County.
No, on the pitch.
Yeah, he'd sign him. Young man, don't ask me again. He's a Derby County player. But the Forest directors wouldn't sanction it. They wouldn't sign it. But Cloughie told him that they did, because Storey-Moore told me, I actually signed for Derby County. Cloughie told him that everything was okay. That was Browne. Carrick's. What was it like playing at Anfield for a United fan?
Well, it was the crowd was just under 30,000, and mainly Manchester, of course, because Arsenal, it was a Friday night and whatever. But as I say, they were the double. They'd won the double.
Good team.
Either I'm looking through rose-coloured glasses or whatever, but there wasn't really. There was one or two, because a lot of United fans would be on the top end. And I had a seat in the new stand. It was okay, but there was violence about it. There's no doubt about it. But you just kept your head down. You knew which way to go, which way to turn, and whatever. But yeah, really good time. The difference, of course, Paul, and I don't want to be an old farty, but the difference is social media.
Yeah.
And, I mean, jumping 10 years, Fergie wouldn't have lasted 4 years like he did if social media had been out. Because I know they came runners up in one of the seasons, but he would have got sacked. And even some match, if you went back, the crash, the following year, they incredibly finished up runners up to the Wolves. But then 1959, 60, 61, 61 too. They were 12, 14, 15, I mean, and a lot of people would have been saying on social media, oh, Matt's lost it and whatever. Of course, he signed Dennis Law the following season, and then everything turned out right for 6 years. But, social media's, it's so... whatever, it's so informative, it's good, but it's bad, it's whatever, isn't it?
I think in the media per se, not just social media, there's a lot of pressure on the how many times do we hear it rolled out? It's a results business. No, it's not. It's a game of football. Managers need time to build clubs, build teams. And when Sir Matt took the job, he A&A'd over whether he was going to be the manager of Liverpool or Man United. But at Man United, he was allowed to not just build a team, but build a club. And that's why Busby went to Manchester United, wasn't it? But you had time in those days. You built things. I mean, today, you've only got to play in the Premier League, lose 7 games, you get the sack. I mean, Watford have a different manager for every season, don't they? Winter, spring, summer, and autumn.
Your other thing, though, Paul, I mean, you'll remember this. I mean, whatever your team is, they were your team.
Yeah.
So you go to the game on Saturday, you're looking forward to a good game. You knew beforehand whether you should win, whether you do well to get a draw, or you were likely to get thumped. But, if you played bad, or they didn't try or whatever, you have a moan, you have a pint with your mates at night and whatever, into work on Monday morning. Tuesday morning, it was, right, we were playing Saturday. Should we go and watch it? And that was it. It was your team and you got on with it. I mean, now, crikey, social media have people sacked and substituted during the game, don't they?
Yeah, they do. He's
playing terrible. Get him off and all that type of thing. And then he scores the last-minute winner. Look at Fred at United. I mean, this guy, I don't know how many he's played on the trot, but he's in the Brazil team. Yeah. Not as a sub. He's a starting 11 player for Brazil. Now, whether or not, I don't know what position he plays for Brazil, but whether Solskjaer was playing him in the wrong position or not. And the other night, last week rather, he made a couple of bad passes and then he scored that goal. Next minute he's going to be the next Ballon d'Or winner. I mean, it's incredible.
But again, that is the modern age of football. Whereas, you've always been as good as your last game, but you're as good as your last 20 minutes today.
Yeah.
Because you're right,
Yeah.
there's keyboard warriors putting it about, and it's just absolutely. I look and I think, oh my God, and it's just reams and reams, and it's never ending. If I was a footballer today, there's no way I'd be on social media. Forget that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know where to look.
And them who are, of course, I mean, who writes it for them? Oh, we must try better next week and we apologise. I mean, why not? I mean,
I know.
You're not thinking that, surely. I mean, and then 3 weeks after you win, and then another 3 weeks after, we must try better. I mean, surely they're not writing it.
No, they haven't got time to do all that, and they employ people to do. I mean, they have 3 million followers. The traffic that they would have, it would be incredible. There's no interaction. I just don't understand why fans want to follow the modern day football on social media, because it ain't them, it's somebody working for them. So everything's shallow, it's hollow, it's just it's a facade, isn't it? It ain't like what it was, proper stuff in the 70s. What would your Manchester United lineup be from all the players that you saw in the 70s? I'm guessing Stepney would be your goalkeeper. Who would be your defensive line?
Yeah. I thought you were going to ask the Manchester United lineup from when I first saw them in 1955. That's a bit difficult. My team would be Stepney in goal. The right back, there were two right backs. Scottish international called Alex Forsyth, and then Jimmy Nicholl came into the side about 75. And finished up playing for Northern Ireland as well.
Good player.
So you've got your choice there. A man that Martin Buchan speaks very, very highly of at left back, Stuart Houston.
Yes.
Who Martin says to me is a very good centre half as well. Right at the end, of course, that 77 final, young Arthur Alberston played in that game. So he was a great left back. But of that, you would have probably gone Stepney, Nicholl, and Houston. Buchan would be one of your centre backs. The centre backs interesting because Jim Holton didn't play that long at United, really. Perhaps 2 seasons. Be interesting what Jim McCalliog thought, because he was a Scottish international as well. What his thoughts were on Jim Holton. Because I would think you have different thoughts if you're playing against him than if you're playing with him. But Brian Greenough, of course, as Martin Buchan said to me, I taught him all he knew, because he wasn't your archetypal centre half, really, Brian Greenough. But him and Buchan had a very decent partnership. I think Holton and Buchan would be your centre backs. Probably playing 4-2-4 here. Yeah. So top of my head midfield would be Sammy McIlroy and Lou Macari. Although Jerry Daly, might have had a shout, but I think McIlroy and Macari. Hill and Coppell at 7, Hill at 11. Definitely Stuart Pearson as centre forward. And definitely Jimmy Greenough at inside right. So it would be Stepney 1, Nicholl 2, Houston 3, McIlroy 4, Holton 5, Buchan 6, Coppell 7, Jimmy Greenoff 8, Pearson 9, Lou Macari 10, and Gordon Hill 11.
That ain't about 11, is it?
David McCready would be the super sub.
Did you have any former players' input when you were writing this book?
Yeah, well, I actually had tapes and interviews that I'd made with these guys for other productions. Mm-hmm. So I slipped them in. Top of my head, Alex Stepney I'd interviewed, and he used his thoughts. Simon McIlroy I'd interviewed. Lou Macari I'd met 2 or 3 times. So definitely their stories were interspersed across the thing. I mean, Stepney, for example, the time I interviewed him was the sort of book like "What was your favourite game?" and all that type of thing. And I would have assumed he would have said the '68 European Cup final. When Eusebio nearly shot through his chest with that ball.
Did he just?
But he said, coming back to the '70s, his best ever game for United was the away match at Sunderland in the league, where they drew 0-0, and he had one of those unbelievable games. And that was in that period I was saying to you after Jim Holton broke his leg, where we were under bits of pressures, and Sunderland missed out actually on promotion. The home game, by the way, with Sunderland, still recognised as one of the great 61,000.
Well, I remember that as a kid. I'm like, you're having a laugh, ain't you? How many?
And Villa had been there the fortnight before, and it was 55,000 for that.
Yeah.
So, but he said no, that was his greatest ever game for United. Was the 0-0 draw at Sunderland in the second division.
And he had a good game against Stan Bowles, didn't he? That was on Match of the Day.
Yes.
He saved Stanley's spot kick. And there was some lovely archives from Match of the Day where Stepney and Bowles are there. And what did he say to you? Well, you can imagine what Stan Bowles said to Alex Stepney, can't you?
Yeah, Georgie Best, of course, had quotes from George.
Yeah.
Which again I interspersed into the book.
Because again, George, although he's not in because you've named pretty much your 11 from Doherty onwards, haven't you?
Yeah, because obviously George, Bobby, and Dennis played the first 3 seasons.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
But I mean, George had that season I told you about with O'Farrell.
Yeah.
I mean, he was magnificent. I mean, we are talking genuine world class.
Yeah.
And could have been. But he only played, and of course he disappeared too much. Whereas Steve Coppell played 5 seasons in that decade, and would get the vote over it. But Best is the best player. I think I mentioned it before. George Best is the best player I've ever seen. So if I'm picking an all, and Dennis as well. The Charlton's an interesting one, I mean, this could cause eruption between United fans, but Charlton's an interesting one. I'll just throw some out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw Bobby play in the youth team, in the reserves, saw his United debut, saw his last United game. And truly great player. The interesting thing is, if you're picking a 4-2-4 of Manchester United greats, now, a lot of people would say, well, Best, Law and Charlton automatically go in.
Yeah.
But that is correct, because Dennis would probably go in as a number 10, and George could go in as 7 or 11. But Bobby is an interesting one, because from my point of view, the best number 9 I've ever seen was the late, great Tommy Taylor, who was a genuine number 9. And playing 4-2-4, you would have, you'd probably have Best, say, at 7, you'd have Taylor at 9, and you'd have Law at 10. Now, Bobby did play a lot of games outside left.
Yeah.
He also played, of course, at number 9. So if you wanted to put him in the team, but number 11, he wasn't a world class number 11. If you follow what I mean, he did his best, more than his best, and probably played a lot of games for England at that. But really, to me, Bobby Charlton was an outstanding, what you and I would call the old-fashioned inside forward.
Yeah.
Now, if you're playing 4-2-4, okay, you've got two inside forwards. But I would argue that Brian Robson and Duncan Edwards would be 2 midfield players.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. I mean, Charlton could play at the 11, but then again, Giggs was an actual 11, wasn't it?
Oh, he was a left winger, yeah.
Yeah. So that's not being not being argumentative, but picking your best ever Manchester United team, which position would you put Bobby Charlton? And if you say 9, I would argue Tommy Taylor was a better 9.
Yeah.
If you say 11, I would say that Ryan Giggs was a better 11. Now, if you're then saying instead of Brian Robson or Duncan Edwards as midfield, well, that's argumentative. And it's a good argument, isn't it?
We're going to be argumentative here because we're going to finish shortly.
Yeah.
But we're going to now pick your all-time Manchester United 11. You've done your 70s, so we're going back to the Babes as well now. I know that you were only a young boy when you were watching the Babes, but from the 50s there till now, what would be your United 11? I'm going to find this very interesting.
Well, I've obviously been asked quite a few times to do that. And how I did it, by the way, I actually finished up with 66 players. Because I had a 50s 11.
Yeah.
60s 11.
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
80s. 90s. And zeros.
Yeah.
So I've not gone this last decade from 2010.
Yeah.
So, and then it interspersed it. And I'll tell you pretty quickly what the 11 I chose. And the 11 I chose, the goalkeeper would be Schmeichel, but Van der Sar very, very close. It was just that Schmeichel played a bit longer than Van der Sar, but Schmeichel as the goalkeeper. The 2 fullbacks. Now, again, I put Johnny Carey in because Johnny Carey was one of the greatest footballers in the world when he was captain of Manchester United. Roger Byrne was a magnificent number 3 and a captain and a man. However, this just shows you where it's impossible to do it.
Yep.
Dennis Irwin, Tony Dunn are 2 magnificent for Irwin in particular has to be very, very close. So, I'd probably put Irwin at 2 because of Johnny Carey was just before my time, really. Anyhow, I met him, but I know of his history. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and you only have to look at that history. The man who captained the rest of the world against Great Britain in 1946. You're talking, okay, leave him out. But so I'd probably go Irwin as 2 and Roger Byrne at 3. I'm playing 4-2-4 here. At centre-backs, we've had 2 pairings of centre-backs that would take some shifting. Bruce and Pallister, who I felt knitted together brilliantly. Yeah. And Stam and Ferdinand, who also knitted together forward. And that is a sheer toss-up. I'd probably go I'd probably go Bruce and Pallister. But, you could, but I'm not mentioning Martin Buchan there. I mean, do you mix and match? Do you put Stam as a forceful centre-half with Buchan? So it's difficult. The 2 in midfield would be Robson and Edwards. And the 4 up front, as I said, would be Best at 7. Would be, who did I say?
Tommy Taylor.
Taylor at 9, Law at 10, and Giggs at 11. Yeah. Which, so reading it on a 1 to 11, I assume you'd be playing Robson sort of as the 8. Or the 10 with Dennis at number 8, that type of thing, and Duncan Edwards anywhere. So it is difficult, but I think there's food for thought there. But the Bobby Charlton one is very, very interesting. If you just saying, well, he's the greatest player United's ever had, which you could argue. I mean, I wouldn't argue against that. So he has to be in the team. But you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. It's one of them. Are you picking 11 names or are you picking a team?
Yeah.
That's the difference. Because if you're picking 11 names, you could finish up with 6-7 forwards, couldn't you?
How close would Dennis Viollet have been to that United team?
Yeah. Yeah, very. Violet was one of the greats of the Busby Babes, so consequently, again, if you're looking for that 10 as the out-and-out goal scorer. But here's one for you, of course. You could look at Rooney now, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
On his record. So
Yeah.
it's virtually impossible. Virtually impossible.
And how about Cantona? How would Cantona be viewed by the United fans? I know that, I mean, you listen to United or watch United on the telly, and they're still singing songs about Eric Cantona today.
Yeah, but again, interestingly, I mean, here's one for you then. What position do you think Cantona played? What position personally do you think he played?
I would say that Eric just played where he wanted to.
Oh, that's a brilliant answer.
Basically, you just say, Eric, go and play.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if you're picking positions,
absolutely, yeah.
Robson was an out-and-out midfielder of real class, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Edwards was, of course. So you're saying, well, I can't put Eric into there. So Best to me is the best right winger I've seen. And Eric wasn't a right winger.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a left winger. But you're right. In our old-fashioned parlance, Eric was playing 8, 9, and 10, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In that type of situation. But if you're actually picking those who played in that position rather, it's just impossible. We're just so fortunate. And I keep telling them all, stop knocking it. If they have a bad game, they have a bad game. If they come second, I mean, last year, like it or lump it, United finished second out of 92 clubs. They were beaten finalists, deservedly beaten finalists, but they should have won the Europa League. And the stick and we can't stand it. I mean, there'd be quite a few clubs would swap there, wouldn't they, for those places?
Well, my team, if we'd have done that, we'd have thought we'd have died and gone to heaven. We've never finished anything like. And my 11 of all time with Birmingham City, you'd go, oh my God. Apart from Francis, Hatton and Latchford, I think we're struggling for the rest of them. You can't have Fergie and you can't have Sir Matt as the manager. Who would your manager of that team be? And by the way, Big Ron says that Robbo was the greatest player that he ever managed.
Yeah. I think Ferguson again, but that, and I saw both of them and met both of them, and obviously had the real privilege of interviewing Matt in his office, just me and him, for 45 minutes. And, fantastic. That's where it makes it impossible, doesn't it? I mean, nothing should be impossible. But if you say one, there's as good an argument to say the other, isn't there?
So we take them two away. Who's the manager? Because Fergie and Sir Matt, they're just different class. Who's the biggest character that could actually manage that team? For me, there would be only one Man United manager, and that'd be Ron.
Big Ron. He certainly would. I tell you what. When you go back to the 70s, but Ron was more towards the end of the 70s, wasn't he, when he started West Brom?
Yeah.
But those players we spoke about before, can you imagine Ron managing them for England?
Yeah.
But even Ron doing that, you come up against a side that it's all right saying we're going to win 6-5 every game, but you come up against a side that might beat you 6-5 as well.
Because, I mean, talking 6-5s and stuff, West Bromwich Albion famously beat United, what was it, 78? Was it 5-3?
Yeah, I went to the game, and that, of course, is in this in the 70s. The programme gets the pride of place in it. Okay, I'll give you if I'm not picking Busby and Ferguson, here's a name for you. No one who listening to this may have ever heard of. Ernest Magnell. Mangall.
You've done me again.
He took United to the first title in 1908, first FA Cup in 1909, and then he won it again in 1911. And I think he went to City after that.
Fantastic. And you can get this book, Manchester United through the 70s.
Yeah, legendspublishing.net.
Absolutely. Is there anything finally that you want to talk about that we haven't covered that's in your book? And I'm going to give you the final few words because you are after all intents and purposes, an absolute legend, a great top man, an MBE and a friend. And the amount of books that you've written about Manchester United, you've absolutely educated me.
Well, my final word on this is that firstly, there's a Birmingham man, or I should say an Aston Villa man, because he might get upset if I say Birmingham, but Colin Abbott,
Yes.
he was the man who recommended me to do it, to Legends, so thank you to Colin Abbott. And of course, Carl Abbott helps out on the books as well. But I think the biggest thing that even now, I said to you, I don't read it now, but is Martin Buchan's forward. Because like we said with Bobby Robson, Bobby Charlton, do you want to write down what happened, Martin? No. I will write the 3,000 word forward. Every word is his. And not that I was edging towards it, although I'd be honoured to do it. But I said, why have you never wrote a book? He said, no. He said, this will be the nearest anyone gets to seeing a book by me. And it's 3,000 words in there by Martin Buchan. And I'll leave you, Martin Buchan, I'll leave you just with one cherry. He felt a lot of senior players let Franco Farrell down. That, and he said that's not just because Franco Farrell was the man who signed me, but he felt a lot of people. And again, what I just say to you, from that August to that Christmas, 5 points clear after 21 games and playing some scintillating football, and then lost 8 on the trot. I mean, okay, so.
It's a funny old game, isn't it? Football, as James Peter Greaves once said. What's next on the horizons for Roy Cavanagh? And why wouldn't Martin write a book? Because I mean, you'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's his own man. I tell you what, there's no doubt about it. By the way, he would be able to write it himself. Yeah. You know what I mean? He wouldn't. I love me cricket as well.
Yes.
I've done 6 or 7 cricket books, and I'm doing one at the minute about a guy called Len Otwood, who played for Lancashire from 1924-5 to the war to 1939, and he was involved in 4 or 5 championship titles, which from 1934 Lancashire went 77 years without winning a title. And he's one of only 3 players who've scored 1,000 runs and took 100 wickets in the same season in Lancashire's history. Yeah. And he did it twice. And it's an interesting story, and I'm just dabbling into it and dabbling out of it.
And we've got the Ashes at the moment in Australia. Am I right in saying there was a Manchester United player that took a wicket in an Ashes series and also scored or definitely played for Manchester United?
Sidebottom did he?
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Was it Sidebottom?
Arnie Sidebottom. I'm sure he took a wicket in an Ashes test. And I'm not too sure whether he scored for Manchester United, but he definitely played for Manchester United. And that was in the 70s as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. He'll be in this book, in Arnie. Definitely. Tommy Baldwin, born Gateshead, 10th of June 1945. Arnie Sidebottom. 20 appearances, no goals.
No goals. So he played for United, but he didn't score for United.
Yeah. His son, of course, is Ryan Sidebottom.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
It's
Pleasure.
been an absolute pleasure again, sir. And can I just thank you so much for your time? And we will reconvene again when we're talking more about Manchester United. I want to do, I'm doing a little series Too Good to Be Forgotten. You kindly join me for a chat about Dennis Violet. Perhaps after Christmas now, I'd love to have a chat Too Good to Be Forgotten about the Salford lad, Eddie Coleman.
Yeah, lovely. No problem. And be careful when that boot drops through the letterbox.
Hey, the poor old postman.
All the best, by the way, for Christmas and New Year. You take
Lovely, likewise. Thanks, Roy. Thanks for your time. And thanks for listening, guys. Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The living room is where you make life's most beautiful memories. But your sofa shouldn't be the one remembering them. The new life-resistant, high-performance furniture collection from Ashley is designed to withstand all the spills, slip-ups, and muddy paws that come with the best parts of life. Ashley high-performance sofas and recliners are soft, on-trend, and easy to clean. Shop the high-performance furniture in-store or online at ashley.com. Ashley, for the love of home.